Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be here with you today. Buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. Es un placer para mí estar con ustedes hoy. Me pidieron que les hablara del liderazgo, pero no del liderazgo en general, sino del que viven las cooperativas y las mutualistas, y que tratara de resaltar las similitudes y las diferencias de un liderazgo cooperativo y un liderazgo corporativo. O, digámoslo de otra forma, del liderazgo que se vive en las empresas cooperativas o mutualistas y el que las empresas de capital social. Soy canadiense y como tal, primero les presentaré un punto de vista norteamericano. No estoy aquí para decirle a cada uno lo que tiene que hacer, sino más bien para compartir mis puntos de vista y mis experiencias. Es todo un reto. Entonces, para respaldar mis propósitos, tuve que consultar la documentación pertinente. Esto no es tarea sencilla, ya que existe una gran cantidad de textos sobre el liderazgo que presentan muchas definiciones y descripciones de este tema. Se ha estudiado bajo todos los ángulos posibles. Elegí abordar ciertos temas específicos que nos conciernen a todos. Trataré de definir lo que es el liderazgo y lo que es propio del liderazgo cooperativo. Además, identificaré algunas diferencias entre el liderazgo cooperativo y el corporativo, principalmente sobre la repartición del poder, la respuesta a las necesidades de los miembros, el servicio a la comunidad, la gestión basada en el enfoque de beneficio mutuo, la estructura, la gobernabilidad, para finalizar ciertos elementos que demuestran nuestro liderazgo en el mercado. Now, what is leadership? Business leaders have been studied, interviewed, and analyzed to gain an understanding of leadership so that we might be able to explain it or teach it to others who hope to become leaders. Some authors make distinctions between individual leadership, leadership by a person, and business leadership, being a market leader, although we all know that the first is a prerequisite for the second. Others even try to dissociate leadership from the managers themselves. However, as noted by Canadian academic Henry Mintzberg, who wants to work for a manager who lacks the quality of leadership? We might think of leadership as a vertical, top-down influence exercised by one person over others. All managers are aware of this type of leadership, which is exercised through skill or behavior, through management style, be it participative or autocratic, or simply through the authority of a given position. We might also talk about true leadership, which is defined according to the results achieved. A leader is a person who has accomplished the hopes that we placed in him or her. Several studies on leadership have shown that anyone can become a leader if they demonstrate the required behavior and are able to apply appropriate measures. This little foray into the literature has shown me that there are few articles, studies, or research papers that specifically address leadership in the cooperative or mutualistic sector. Nonetheless, several internationally recognized authors have flirted with the idea without specifically naming it. Henry Mintzberg, for example, talks about communityship or shared leadership, saying that although the leadership role may vary, it is shared by people in a group according to their abilities and the conditions that exist at a given time. Is this not a reflection of the governance of cooperatives and mutuals? Another expert, Michael E. Porter, speaks of shared value, which is defined as all policies and practices that promote competitiveness and performance while stimulating economic and social development in the community where the company is located. Is this not part of the very mission of cooperatives and mutuals to contribute to community development. Rune Vist Olsen addresses the issue of self-help and self-responsibility. He rightly points out that the objective of a power structure is to support the democratic principle of rule by the people. Is this not exemplified in the cooperative concept of one person, one vote? Edith Luc describes leadership as a process of mutual influence between people, mobilized for a common cause, which she calls shared leadership, just as Mintzberg. This is the contribution of leadership and resources by each individual and by the whole group to achieve a common goal. Shared leadership is based on cooperative relationships between individuals, groups, and organizations. Is not this the very foundation of the creation of a cooperative and a mutual? Clearly, the economic and business community increasingly recognizes that leadership is an act of collaboration, which is even more true in the case of cooperatives and mutuals. However, whether they be cooperatives, mutuals, or shareholder-owned companies, businesses need leadership. And we see that leadership is a process of influence. But then, how is leadership exercised in cooperatives and mutuals different from the leadership exercised by other types of businesses? Well, the challenge for the cooperative and mutualist movement is great, because while in need of vertical leaders like managers who can lead their staff to achieve company goals, they also need leaders who understand the very basis of cooperation and mutuality, the sharing of power and information for the common good, and can apply it in their daily management. At this time, I'd like to get a sense of how well you believe your organization's leaders know and apply cooperative values using the electronic voting system. I will read the question. You will have 15 seconds to answer, and we'll see how the results are on the board. The question is, how would you evaluate your leaders in your organization? How would you evaluate their level of knowledge and application of cooperative values? Very good knowledge and application, very good knowledge but little application is number 2, and little or no knowledge of application is number 3. So you have 15 seconds. So number 2, with 2/3 of respondents saying that you have a good knowledge but little application. So that gives some attention probably to the rest of my speech today. So very good, thank you. Very few leaders and managers in the world know what the cooperative or mutual model is. And the subject is taught very little or not at all in schools or universities. Let's be honest, for the most part, we have all learned on the job. We discovered the power of the cooperative and mutual model by working in it. In 2009, at the opening of Desjardins Group Congress of elected officers, Chairman of the Board, President and Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Monique Leroux, said the following: "To have leadership means creating a vision of the future, like the founders of Desjardins did, in a disciplined and prudent manner. Without leadership, there is no vision. Without leadership, there is no action. There is only reaction to the leadership of others." Most companies face the same challenges: meet the competition, remain the leader in existing markets, conquer new markets, create niches, remain profitable, and so on. However, values differ for cooperative and mutuals and other types of companies. And mainly the methods chosen to achieve objectives are, of course, influenced by those values. Cooperatives and mutuals seek a form of leadership that is closer to those values. This leadership could be characterized as shared, since the bottom-up democratic structure based on the concept of one person, one vote, in which all member owners have a say on major orientations, must be respected and encouraged. This kind of leadership has been in effect since the creation of the cooperatives over 100 years ago, long before Mintzberg, Porter, Luke Olson began describing it as the future of business management. Now let's talk about the differences. The first difference relates to the sharing of power. One person, one vote, rather than the concentration of power. Democratic processes are a key component of cooperative and mutual businesses. Although sometimes this process can be long and arduous, it allows everyone to share the vision of the company and to fully contribute and adhere to it. In the words of Hugues Sibyl, Vice President of Crédit Coopérative, the economy must become more democratic. Cooperatives can provide inspiration for this. Have they not demonstrated their resilience and their strength through the current economic crisis? Are they not, for many, a viable solution to various crises around the world? Unlike profit-driven corporations, it is clear that the member owners must have the opportunity to be heard on the major decisions that affect them. This process can sometimes slow decision-making, but it is fundamental to democracy, transparency, and equality. This is the price to pay to keep our cooperatives and mutuals alive, and it is this form of governance or participatory leadership that will mean success for the businesses of tomorrow. Furthermore, it's been my experience that the time required to implement change in corporate enterprises compared to cooperative or mutual is all in all the same. In the case of cooperative enterprise, the decision-making process, in the case of corporate enterprise, the decision-making process may be short because it's top-down, but the application of the change can be long and arduous before everyone understands and adhere to it. On the other hand, in the case of a cooperative or a mutual, the decision-making process, which has a bottom-up part, can be long, since it seeks the buy-in from the start, but this facilitates more rapid implementation of the change in the end. So although the path taken is not the same, the total time spent implementing the change is not so different. Again, we'll try the electronic voting system with the second question. Same process, 15 seconds to answer. The question is, the time it takes to implement a change is relatively the same in a corporate enterprise as in a co-op or mutual. Answer number one, you agree. Number two, you somewhat agree. Number three, you disagree. Okay, so the majority of people disagree with that. So you believe probably that the time is a bit shorter with the co-op and the mutuals to implement decisions being into accord with the basis of the members. Thank you. Another difference now. Another thing that sets cooperatives and mutuals apart from corporations is our dedication to responding to the needs rather than creating them. A fundamental purpose of cooperatives and mutuals is to improve living conditions. All cooperatives' activity is directly inspired by serving people and their communities. To do this, a spirit of initiative and creativity are among our trademarks. However, we too often consider our members as clients. This removes us from the very base of activity and deprives us of an invaluable source of information on potential market development. We are reduced to doing what the other businesses do. We find ourselves organizing focus groups rather than just consulting and listening to our member owners. The Business Intelligence Source Inc. internet site introduces the notion of cooperative leadership. in the sense of leadership through cooperation. To quote the site, "True leadership rests on an element of cooperation. Cooperative leaders are not full of ego and pushing their own agendas. They look for indications and welcome intelligence from all the sources available, both inside and outside of the company." We can say quite frankly that corporate firms are increasingly seeking to imitate us on that topic. In short, while we sometimes try to imitate their products or services, they copy our democracy, our management style, and our approach with our members. We do not seem to really realize the kind of strength we have, the kind that can make all the difference. We are the only form of business that can truly say that we exist to meet the needs of people because we are created to do exactly that. Let's look at another of our differences, serving the community and not the shareholders. I truly believe that leaders should use their position to ensure that cooperatives and mutuals remain focused on the vision, values, and purpose of the enterprise. Boards have a responsibility for understanding the cooperative's business as well as the external environment in which the business operates. Unlike the private, public, or volunteer sectors, all cooperatives around the world are governed by the same 7 principles: voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, member economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, training, and information, cooperation among cooperatives, and concern for the community. These principles focus on inclusiveness, participation and control by the owner members, independence and interdependence. Only one of these principles identifies the financial aspect, which reminds us that financial performance is not an end in itself, nor is it the single dominant driver of cooperatives and mutuals. The officers and leaders, whether elected or employed, must continually make efforts to meet the different needs of members and the community while ensuring sound financial management. This is a fundamental difference. As we come out of crises that have affected all countries, companies are expected by governments, people, and the young generation, our future leaders, to be economically and socially responsible, transparent, and honest. But as cooperatives and mutuals, we have a head start in those areas. Will we know how to take advantage of our position? Will we be the leaders that we should be in those areas? One of the major differences between us and shareholder-owned company is the quest for balance between a number of concerns. Sid Bildfeld, CEO of Sask Central in Canada, said the co-op model is not based on a win-lose approach. Bringing value to both sides is important. This doesn't mean that we don't negotiate, but we are careful to bring value to the other side. We aim for win-win solutions. This statement summarizes and distinguishes the cooperative style as a whole, which targets common interests rather than opposing ones. Cooperatives and mutuals must achieve a delicate balance between business development and community development. This is the very basis of the shared value concept described by Porter. Balance is a key word in the cooperative sector. Balance between social and economic objectives, between business and community needs, between the short term and the long term, between business development and risk management, between growth and meeting the needs of the members. So in managing our organizations, we must seek to maintain a balance between various concerns, and in particular between 2 key concerns on a daily basis: our social responsibilities and our economic ones. I would like again to get your feedback about the extent in which this balance is being attained by your organization leaders. 15 seconds, one more time. How well would you say your organization balances its social and economic responsibilities? Number 1, very well. Number 2, relatively well most of the time. Number 3, balance is hard to maintain. Okay, I expected that one. About 50%. You know, life is not that easy that we can do the balanced thing every day. Thank you again. The last major difference that I'd like to talk about today is with respect to democratic governance. Leadership in the area of governance is the primary role of the board of directors, since it has a responsibility for representing and updating the vision of the cooperative. Our elected officers play a crucial role in governance, especially because the members own the cooperative and elect their leaders according to the system of one member, one vote. Our expectations of our elected officers continue to grow. Whatever their origins, we ask elected officers to understand financial statements, decide on the associative aspect of our activities, take part in strategic decisions, etc. We must, therefore, continually invest time to accompany them in order to facilitate the transition from the operational stage to a more engaged, more strategic level. At Desjardins, we have the Desjardins Cooperative Institute that provides continuous information and training so that our elected officers can carry out their role effectively. We call that the Desjardins University, in fact. Finally, unlike other businesses, cooperatives and mutuals have a large pool of potential leaders among members, elected officers, employees, and managers. It is up to us to learn to tap into their full potential. I'd now like to take one last pool of your opinion regarding all of the differences between cooperatives and mutuals that I alluded to. And so the question is, in your opinion, which is the most significant difference between us and a traditional corporate business with the 5 differences I alluded in my text? The sharing of power, response to existing needs, serving the community, management based on balance, or democratic governance. Again, you have 15 seconds. So that's pretty spread, but the one that is the most vote is governance, followed by number 3, which is service to community. That's interesting. That's interesting. Number 2 scores a bit low to me, but governance these days is so important, around the world that that's something we all have to work on. So thank you. Now I'd like to talk about the important role of cooperatives and mutuals in terms of job creation and sustainability. In Canada alone, there are approximately 9,000 cooperatives and credit unions, providing products and services to 18 million members. Cooperatives have more than $330 billion in assets owned by their members and the communities they serve. Cooperatives employ 150,000 people and are led by more than 100,000 volunteers, volunteer directors, and community members. The survival rate of cooperatives is higher than that of traditional businesses. A 2008 study in Quebec only found that 62% of new cooperatives were still operating after 5 years, compared only to 35% for other businesses, so the double. After 10 years, the figures are 44 versus 20%, again the double. Worldwide, the cooperatives and mutual movement creates and maintains more than 100 million jobs. This is 20% more than the multinational businesses. For example, in Argentina, cooperatives provide direct employment to more than 233,000 individuals. In Colombia, they provide more than 130,000 jobs through direct employment and more than almost 600,000 more jobs as worker owners in workers' cooperatives. In France, 21,000 cooperatives provide 1 million jobs. In Indonesia, the jobs amount to almost 300,000. In Iran, cooperatives has created and maintained 1.5 million jobs. In Spain, they provide 21.6% of the labor market. And this list may go on and on and on. Cooperatives exist in all sectors of the economy. Why? I think it's to meet the needs of people that the present capitalist economic model has not been able to fill. That affects all aspects of our lives. A person can be born in a cooperative healthcare facility and buried in a funeral cooperative. A person can work, live, eat, buy goods, including groceries and clothing, get daycare, make financial transactions, and even purchase insurance, all in doing business with cooperatives. Cooperatives think more readily outside the box and find creative ways to solve problems. They are often at the forefront of new ideas, like in organic farming, environmentally friendly and reducing packages, recycling, and alternative energy. Desjardins has broken new grounds with its green funds, access to microcredit, industrial insurance, and insurance for hybrid cars, and a combination of insurance products. En conclusión, diría que si usted tuviera que retener algo de este extenso discurso, le recomendaría que fuera lo siguiente. El liderazgo para una cooperativa o una mutualista no puede ser responsabilidad de sola una persona. Este liderazgo es y debe ser compartido. Es lo que hace de nosotros lo que somos y lo que ha dado a las cooperativas y mutuales la resistencia por la que se les ha reconocido y les ha permitido tener un mejor desempeño en medio de la crisis económica actual. Las personas van y vienen. El pensamiento común persiste. Les pediría también que recordaran esto. Los intereses de las cooperativas se extienden sobre un horizonte a largo plazo. Reflejan la multiplicidad de las perspectivas de los participantes y respetan el equilibrio entre la salud financiera, el desarrollo comunitario, la responsabilidad social. Haciendo del equilibrio y de la responsabilidad los motores de su acción, la cultura cooperativa es inminentemente favorable a la emergencia, a la práctica y al desarrollo del liderazgo. Espero haber logrado mi objetivo de establecer las similitudes y diferencias entre el liderazgo cooperativo y el corporativo. Por último, quisiera invitarlos a participar en la primera cumbre internacional de las cooperativas que se llevará a cabo en Canadá en 2012. Esta primera edición está organizada por Desjardins y sus coanfitriones, la Alianza Cooperativa Internacional y la Universidad Sainte-Marie en Nueva Escocia, Canadá. Los temas que aborde hoy estarán enriquecidos por los intercambios entre los líderes de las cooperativas y las mutualistas de todo el mundo, los sectores y actividades económicas mezclados y los investigadores y conferencistas reconocidos internacionalmente. Este evento, que se llevará a cabo del 8 al 11 de octubre de 2012 en la hermosa ciudad de Quebec, será una ocasión propicia de intercambios fructíferos para que juntos contribuyamos de manera concreta y significativa al reconocimiento, visibilidad y avance del movimiento cooperativo mundial. Agradezco a todos por haberme escuchado con tanto interés. Perdón por mi terrible acento en español. Espero verlos en Quebec en 2012 y mientras llega ese momento, utilicemos todos nuestro liderazgo para hacer que en nuestra propia casa se